We love America, right? No brainer. You love it. I love it. I love where we came from. I love where we're going. But right now, to be honest, we got a problem. I'm not too fond of America as it is right now. Stupid, depraved, and rather sick. I'm going to focus on three items right now that are corroding our country. That is crime, that is a ludicrous conversation about gender and education. Just three. We could go on and on. First, crime. You know what happened starting a year ago, how we canceled cops, delegitimized them, stigmatized them. Should we be surprised at all that we're seeing what we're seeing now? Horrendous crime spikes. And in the past couple of days, these murders are becoming grislier and grislier. Take a look at this guy, a rapper shot, his name is KTS Dre in Chicago, 31 years old, shot 65 times. Here's a guy, Indian Red Boy, also known as Zarrail Rivera, 21 years old in Hawthorne. He was shot as he was live streaming on Instagram. Here in New York, J-Rip Elliott, just 13 years old. He was a gang member. He was shot over the weekend. Gang violence, it's believed that he was absolutely targeted. You know, Barack Obama was onto something back when he had strength, bravery, or maybe he was just trying to con us, but he talked about the absence of black fathers in the African American community. Too many absent fathers. Not all, of course, in every community suffers from this, but more so in the African American community, and that leads to things like higher dropout rates, higher incarceration rates. We can go on. The violence has been never-ending, it seems. Take a look at this. These two kids, they were shot along with that 13-year-old J-Ron I told you about. These kids a little bit older in the same gang fight up in the Bronx. Ramon Gil Medrano, 16 years old. Ty Swish, 19 years old. Then we have Shaquille Walker, a 3-year-old boy in Buffalo, New York, came out to see the fireworks. So he wasn't involved, of course, but someone fired a gun. He was killed. Justin Wallace, 10 years old, from Queens, New York. This is happening all the time, and our so-called leaders don't seem to care. The increase in crime, they're treating it like it's the weather, but you could have predicted it like a clock, okay? Take a look at these numbers when you compare where we were just a short time ago. Here in New York City is perhaps, it's very close to home, of course. I see it firsthand. This situation is out of control. So we know, you know, the far left, Democrats, they set the conditions for this to happen. So what are they coming up with? The most anemic non-solutions ever. Joe Biden hosted a summit of sorts on crime. You think Joe Biden has any unique ideas, compelling ideas on how to fight crime? And nobody at the table was equipped to find the solutions. It was pathetic, but we're going through the motions. Joe Biden, it's kind of fitting that's happening on his watch because he perpetuated urban myths during the campaign that were just untrue and so dishonest.
I never had to tell my daughter, if she's pulled over, make sure she puts, for a traffic stop, put both hands on top of the wheel and don't reach for the glove box because someone may shoot you. But a black parent, no matter how wealthy or how poor they are, has to teach their child, when you're walking down the street, don't have a hoodie on when you go across the street. Making sure that you, in fact, if you get pulled over, just yes, sir, no, sir, hands on top of the wheel.
Such terrible pandering. And by the way, Joe, everybody is supposed to pay attention to the cops when we get pulled over, and everybody gets a little bit nervous. They do. We need a civil society. We need a safe society, and rapidly we're losing that. We are losing that, as our culture, though, really does very little about it. So still focused on issues of gender. Have you noticed, right? You can't get away from it, especially transgender and what is transgender and the right pronouns and all that kind of stuff. It is a great, big, giant waste of time. And I thought Peter Thiel nailed it. Do you know Peter Thiel? He was an early Trump supporter. He also invented PayPal. He also was an early investor in Facebook. And actually, I think it's somewhat relevant. He happens to be gay. Here's a point he made at the 2016 Republican National Convention.
When I was a kid, the great debate was about how to defeat the Soviet Union, and we won. Now we are told that the great debate is about who gets to use which bathroom. This is a distraction from our real problems. Who cares?
I thought that was a great moment. Who cares? And it is a distraction. And when he was growing up, yes, folks were focused on big things like getting to the moon. But somehow people still care, or at least the culture is still consumed with issues of gender and promoting transgender and aberrant behavior as if it should be the norm.
Please welcome Desmond Napoles, a.k.a. Desmond is Amazing.
The act is called Desmond is Amazing. Desmond is not amazing. Desmond is rather vulgar and talentless. At least this performance suggests no talent whatsoever.
You're one of the youngest and first drag queen/kids. And I've heard that you've gotten messages from young adults who look up to you for being who you are. What are some of the notes you've gotten?
Some of the notes I've gotten are like that you inspire me very much, and I wish I could have had the support that you have.
What about that audience, huh? Does the audience really like that stuff? It's interesting how they just go along. Did somebody hold up an applause sign and everybody's whooping and hollering? This is aberrant. I don't think this should be celebrated. Not when you're 11. Gender dysphoria, by the way, is a disorder. Gender dysphoria refers to psychological distress that results from an incongruence between one's sex assigned at birth and one's gender identity. According to the American Psychiatric Association, this is a disorder, or at least it was up until a few minutes ago. Yet we celebrate it like it's more than acceptable, like this is a better way to be almost, and it's not. At least it shouldn't be, in my opinion. Now to education. That teachers union, some of them, as bad as we thought.
Mark my words, our union will defend any member who gets in trouble for teaching honest history. We have a legal defense fund ready to go, and we are preparing for litigation as we speak.
Honest history, honest history. What she's getting at are projects like the 1619 Project from the New York Times. They've heard about this, and Nicole Hannah-Jones. This is junk. This is junk history. It's been disproven. It has no merit whatsoever. They're trying to say that America was founded because the founding fathers wanted to have a country where they could let slavery flourish. That's why we bolted from England. Now, any respectable historian in the country has said this is nonsense, but this revisionist history, they're trying to push it big time, and it's been embraced by the teachers union. You just saw that. Folks, this is a dark time, but we can prepare ourselves. We can push back, and we got to be smart about it. This is beyond making fun of political correctness. I want to recommend a book that I think is fabulous, and it may take some time to get through. It's called Speechless: Controlling Words, Controlling Minds by Michael Knowles. And it's a bit of a history lesson on how we got here and what we can do next. Here is a chunk. Let's take a look. Lazy liberals of the left and right parrot slogans about the marketplace of ideas without ever taking seriously the radicals' complaint that someone sets and enforces the rules of the market. They don't even inquire into the provenance of that phrase, which entered into the American mind in 1953 through a concurring opinion written by the infamous sophist William O. Douglas in United States versus Rumley. Here again, one sees the trap of political correctness, which posits a false dichotomy between accepting radical new standards or abandoning standards altogether. Either way, political correctness achieves its purpose of overthrowing traditional society. All right. It's not exactly Nelson DeMille. I had to read it a couple of times, and this is a book you study. You don't necessarily plow through, but these kinds of projects, I think, are worth it because this fight is a bit more complex than we realize. A lot of conservatives, as President Trump said at CPAC, think it's all about fighting over who gets on the Supreme Court and policy differences. No, this is much broader, pervades the culture, political correctness. And books like this, I think, can help. Our founding fathers, they set out a great document, but I feel it's being undermined. You know it, and I know it. You know what's interesting? The folks in Cuba right now, what they are doing. All the stuff that is coming here in America that's in its early stages, well, it's been flourishing, a lot of it in Cuba for a long time. And look at what they're doing. Look at what they're doing. It's actually, in its own way, inspiring. We'll be right back.
You just watched Newsmax TV, America's fastest growing cable news channel, now in more than 70 million homes. You can get Newsmax TV on your cable system or check your cable guide. And if your system doesn't carry Newsmax, call them, tell them you want Newsmax TV, because we're real news for real people.